Afternoon, my name is Warp13 and we're bringing you guys another video. This time here we're doing the Twotrees TTS-55 laser. So sit back, relax, and of course enjoy the show.
I'm gonna have to rain down a godly firestorm on you.
And thank you for viewing this video. If you like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking the icon above, and then of course hitting the bell icon to get notifications when the next video drops. So here we go. This one's going to be a quick review, and it's not going to have any product examples and everything else. I have another video that's going to be coming out that's going to have that information. But for right now, what we're doing right now is showing you the actual laser itself and what do I actually think about it. Now, as you've seen on my prior page and everything else, that I have dealt with lasers before. I do have a review up of another type of laser and everything else that, and I did get another one after that that was a 5 watt as well as this one here. So I'm very versed at how lasers work, and I have to say this laser here, in my opinion, is pretty good. It has some things that I wish it did have, basically like it doesn't have limit switches, which again, I'm used to having limit switches, so you have to use absolute values for where everything is to actually get a laser job done. Whereas before you can set X coordinates and everything else so that to get it done. So I don't like that, but for a basic laser, for the price that it is and everything else so that, and I got mine for about less than $200 and everything else so that, again, I think it's an excellent laser for the price. Now, assembly of the laser was pretty straightforward. I'm not going to show you a video of that. There's plenty of videos around, but there is a trick to doing this and everything else like that, and that is when you have the laser, the easiest thing to do is there's a section right here that hopefully I can show you right here that it has to go underneath the belt, goes around everything else. So that the best thing to do is to lift this section up vertically this way, stick that thing underneath there, and then lay it down and then finish the assembly. That's the easiest way to do it. You don't have to pick with anything. You don't have to use some special tool, anything else. So that it's really simple if you do it that way. Now again, I don't have the best camera in the world, so that I'll be getting a better camera later, but this is what I have right now. Again, the control board inside here is a 32-bit control board, so again, that's really good. It does have extension things that you can buy and everything else like that, but basically when you buy an extension for this, you're basically taking everything apart, all the rails, all the things that you see right here and everything else like that. All of this stuff here would basically go away because it would be replacing every last bit of this for a different set of rails. The only thing they'd be keeping on here is basically the laser itself, the control panel, the motor and everything else, but everything else would have to be reassembled. Now, they do sell a air pump that goes with the laser and everything else, so that I bought one off of Amazon, and basically this one here is one that you'd use for an aquarium. It has the same CFM as the one that they want and everything else so that, but I didn't choose that one because simple fact is it was too expensive and it didn't come with it. You do have to, use the attachment parts and everything else so that to make it work and everything else so that, but again, it ties directly into this part right here, goes into, goes into here, and then it's attached. And the thing about this, it has variable valving, so you can basically put as much air as you want inside of the system and as much air as you don't want. Now, overall, the fit and finish, this thing is very sturdy. It does very well at cutting. It does very well at actually engraving. Again, I'm not showing those stuff right now. That's going to be in a separate video. The packaging that it came in, as you can see right here, you can see everything had a spot for it and everything else. That it had extra screws. It had all the tools that you need to put the laser together. It had a booklet, not just a pamphlet, but a full colored booklet on how to assemble it. Most of these things come with some little pamphlet, or usually have a USB drive or something like that that you have to look up and everything else. So that this one came with a book that was right away, make it easy to assemble it. Now it does come with a USB drive. It has some things inside of it so you can practice on and everything else. That it does come with some consumables that you can use to get started. But I found that literally you can use almost any piece of wood to get started really quickly. Any piece of paper, you just gotta basically dial in the numbers and everything else like that. And to get the most out of it, now this is a Wi-Fi setup. You can use Wi-Fi with it, but I find the Wi-Fi to be clunky and cumbersome. I wish the Wi-Fi, that's another peeve, I wish the Wi-Fi was much easier to use with Lightburn, because that's the program that I recommended to use and everything else. If it was easier to use with Lightburn, it'd be so sweet. But unfortunately, the way it's set up is really clunky and you cannot use it effectively with Lightburn. Again, as in Wi-Fi. Now, if you use a USB plug-in, again, if you look right here, you can see you have your power right here. It comes with its own adapter and everything else. So the power breakers for that, it comes with it. It comes with a cord that's long enough that you can attach this to any PC, and the on-off switch. Now I know in the later models they changed this switch to more of a button and everything else. So it doesn't really make a difference. This is basically either way you go, you flip it, it kills it right away. No big deal and everything else of that. What I really like about this as well is on this side here you can see motor, and on this side here another motor. So to make it work and everything else, that it has motors on both sides to make sure that it doesn't get crooked and anything else, so that it slides so easily. Now, yes, you have to do an adjustment to make it to slide and everything else, so that. But again, this is perfect for the beginner or the hobbyist that's getting into lasers and everything else, so that, and basically feel around what you need to do and everything else, so that. Now, it is a little bit harder to work with because again, it takes a minute for you to set it up. The instructions for setting it up on the computer, I wish was a lot better, but unfortunately the instructions are not in English, so you have to do some translations with Google to get it the way you need to be so you can actually understand what it is. Most of the time you can just hit the button and click and it will follow the prompts and it will install it, and then it will install the drivers and everything else of that. Now what you got to look for though, so that when you install this and you use Lightburn, you got to make sure that you set up the configuration as Laser Gerbil, and then from there you will change the name to Twotrees or whatever name you want for the laser, and then you input the actual dimensions of the cutting area in the system. I wish that in the program itself it did it for you automatically. I wish it had a profile that you can just load into Lightburn that would give it all the information that it needs to just work right away, and you didn't have to configure anything. But that's not the case. You have to configure stuff. The other thing is you're going to find that it's going to try to connect and it's like, oh, it's not working. You have to actually look and see what COM port your computer uses. If you're not a computer savvy person and everything else, that's going to cause you headaches, because you have to go into the device manager, look up the actual control for this, and then see what COM port is actually using. Or you can basically just play Russian roulette on the COM ports and just select all that's in the list, and one of them will be the right one for your system. Cutting wise, it's a 5.5 laser and everything else, so that runs on the hot side. So if compared to my other 5, and again I have another laser that I just got about 2 months before this one, that laser does not cut as well as this one does. That's a 5, this one's a 5.5, but effectively the way it cuts and everything else, that I would say it's more like the way the lenses are inside of it is the difference. Since it's multiple lenses to make it a sharp focal point and everything else of that, that's what makes this laser really good. If it didn't have those focusing mirrors inside of it to make sure that it was basically at a really small point, it would be just like any other 5 watt laser. But since it has all the focus inside it and it's a fixed focus, once you have it dialed in, it can cut really well for 5.5. Now again, it's not a 10 watt. I didn't get sent a 10 watt. I didn't buy a 10 watt. This is me spending my own money for a 5 watt and everything else because I wanted to see another company's version of a laser and see if this one's compared to the other two I have, which one's better. Now, I do have to say and everything else that the controls on this, basically the turn in for focus is at the top, and then you have your lock right here to lock it in place and everything else like that. That is really simple, really easy, but you have newer ones out now that can basically do all of this stuff automatically and everything else like that. So if you're doing for bare bones stuff and everything else like that, it's really good. This is really sturdy. The only problem is, another con, if you look on this side right here where the motor is and everything else, you can see that if you have a long piece, meaning that if you wanted to cut something basically going at the bottom, you would have to use extensions to raise this up. And they do make 3D prints that have the extensions on this and everything else that would raise this up. Because the way the motor is, you have no space underneath this. So if you have thin stock, yes, you can put it right underneath here and everything else like that, and you can set it in place and do what you need to do. But if you have something thicker, you do have to use extensions to raise it up so it can fit underneath there so you can actually do your creative stuff. So again, if you're doing thin plywood, it's fine. It doesn't make a difference. If you're doing something thicker, well, then from there, you will have to raise these up. Speed of the laser. The speed is advertised, you're not hitting that. It's not that fast. I've learned using it so that you're basically 15,000 speed is about the best you're going to be able to do and actually be able to engrave anything. Anything faster than that, not really going to happen. Unless it's super thin, like paper or something like that. So for most people and everything else of that, 14,000 and below will be able to start engraving stuff and everything else of that. Anything above that, if you're cutting something like paper or you're making a design of something that's really, really, really light, you can do that. It does have the precision to do that and everything else of that, but you'll see in the further drawings and everything else, like when I show you the wood cutting, and you'll actually see some slate coasters I've done and things like that, and some things I've made for Mother's Day. You'll see what it actually can do. But until then, my name is Warp103. I hopefully you enjoy this. Again, the next video will be coming up fairly soon, so you can get the full details for it and everything else. So that, again, I would visit Twotrees shop. They do have some things that they have in clearance that if you want to get a good laser for a cheap price, that might be the place you want to be. So again, my name is Warp103. It's time for me to say warp out, have fun. We're going to catch you guys on the next one. Catch you later.